All of that is available before voting commences. So it's a very tight timeframe.
Well, time for our political panel, and joining us right here in the studio, we're pleased to say, New South Wales Liberal Senator Hollie Hughes. Welcome back, Hollie.
Hi, Greg.
And Labor MP for Macnamara, Josh Burns. Welcome to you too. Josh, why don't we start out on The Voice? We just heard from the Commissioner, and I'll go to you first, Hollie, because you've had a Liberal Party Room meeting today. The position is to support the alteration bill without amendment. Is it clear that all Liberals will vote for it, or will some be voting against?
Look at Senate estimates this week. I wasn't in party room this morning, not that I could talk about it anyway, but I don't know what was said this morning. I haven't had an opportunity to catch up with any of my House of Reps colleagues, but we do believe that it is important that Australians have the say. The vast majority of Liberals certainly don't support The Voice in its current format, and it looks like it'll be the words that have been put forward staying as the words. But we do believe it's important that Australians have their say on the referendum. Did
Peter Dutton up the ante, at least rhetorically, with his speech yesterday, in which he spoke about The Voice re-racialising our nation, it having an Orwellian effect, divisive to Australians was the suggestion. I think that is one of the concerns that a lot of Australians have, is that The Voice in its current form will seek to further divide our nation. And I think you can see from the debate already that there's quite a strong divisiveness in it. Noel Pearson in particular, every time he comes out and speaks about it, he accuses anyone who asks a question. Not even someone who's saying they object to it. They're a racist, they're a Judas. You know, it's absolutely unacceptable to have Australians referred to in that way for asking a question about a fundamental change to the Constitution. Do you find that disturbing, Josh Burns? I mean, I imagine you would agree in the context of some lively public debate over the last 5 days that some new tones of division are being struck. Hollie's not disputing that, but where does this lead to over the next 6 months?
There's a couple of things to say, Greg. First of all, I think at every stage when we talk about The Voice, it's important to be reminded and remind ourselves that this is a request made by 250 delegates at the Uluru Conference, where a statement from the heart was produced, where 3 things were asked for voice, treaty and truth in that order. And this is the stage 1. This is about a request of how do we build a better future for First Australians. And I don't think we should lose sight in the political comings and goings. It's not about the Labor Party or the Labor government or the Liberal Party. It's about what are we doing for First Australians. So that's the main thing. The other thing to say is on the topic of the way in which we engage in political debates. You know, your colleague last night gave a pretty powerful reminder of the way in which we need to be conducting ourselves. And Stan Grant gave us actually, I think, a moment where we can reflect on how we talk about issues, how we interact with each other with respect. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that we're elevating this debate and doing it respectfully. And for me, what's important for me is that we're answering the Uluru Statement from the heart.
And do you think those boundaries are recognised and will be stuck to? Boundaries of civil and rational debate. Hollie, I noticed that Thomas Mayo, prominent Yes campaigner, has tweeted, "I've never been abused online as much as I am now," and it's, he says, coincided with the coalition's official no stance. I mean, the deeper we get into this, what do you think the tone of debate's going to look like?
Well, I think the tone of the debate has already descended into, as I just mentioned, Noel Pearson, but there's been other comments. Linda Burney referred to people as wreckers. I do find it interesting that those on the left now experience online trolling. Those of us, particularly conservative women, but those of us on the right have been receiving absolutely vile trolling for a substantial period of time. I've had a number of discussions with the commissioner that looks after e-safety commissioner. And, you know, when it was happening, I received death threats, as have other of my colleagues, and it was all, whatever, they're right-wing women, they deserve it. Now that the left's getting it's all, oh, we need to make sure that we're looking after this. The trolling that occurs online is revolting, regardless of where it occurs, over a number of different areas, and it does need to stop. So it's not just The Voice that we need to ensure that we're lifting the standard of debate in this country.
Yeah, and is it only one-way traffic in that respect,
I'm
Josh,
sure Jacinta hasn't been getting lots of warm and friendly Twitter love either.
Yeah, I guess Twitter might skew one particular way, but in your own experience, leaving aside that of Stan Grant and others, do you get frank and fearless feedback online around The Voice when you advocate as you do here today?
Greg, we get frank and fearless advice about everything, and that's, you know, most of it's fine, but there are moments where you do sort of think that you know, it's really, it does take its toll, and it does, you know, it can be draining, and you know, like, it's not acceptable for it to happen to Hollie. It's not acceptable for it to happen to anyone, especially people who are, you know, trying their best in public life to serve our country. But I, you know, again, I would just say that in these moments, it's important to remind ourselves to try and elevate the debate again. And what is the issue that we're discussing, and why are we here on The Voice? What is The Voice about? It's about trying to answer the Uluru Statement from the Heart, which is put forward by 250 delegates in 2017 to try and put forward a plan to improve the lives of First Nations Australians. And that's something that I really want to be a part of.
I don't want to get too introspective about the role of mainstream media, because let's face it, the ABC is a part of that. But within the context of the Stan Grant discussion, since the weekend anyway, the ABC, through its news director Justin Stevens, has attempted to call out News Corporation and sections of the media. He says that has duly been rebuked by Michael Miller of News Corporation. I'll get an observation from both of you, but to you, Josh, is there any legitimacy in finger pointing about the role of mainstream publishers, broadcasters, the ABC included?
Well, I think people will make up their own minds, and I'm not here to run a commentary on, you know, one media outlet versus another. But I do think that the ABC obviously is our national broadcaster, and they're not above scrutiny. But I do think that at times it has been excessive. I think that some of the personal nature of the commentary and some of the ways in which specific journalists have been targeted has been pretty abhorrent. And so it should never be personal. It should never be about the journalist, and I don't think you should ever play the man. And ideally in politics is the same thing. We should be competing about ideas, not about personality. And so whether it's the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, any other political organisation or media outlets, the way in which we conduct ourselves shouldn't be personal. It should ideally be a public discussion of ideas. Yeah,
and I'm not seeking to protect any individual journalist in asking these questions, but institutionally, I think you might even have a role at estimates when the ABC appears.
11 a.m. tomorrow.
But yeah, okay, there you go, set your clock. Conflict, though, as it might exist between the major media companies, is that a problem in this country for the
It's natural
debate?
Competition, really. The only difference is News Corp and others are privately funded versus a publicly funded institution in the ABC. I did notice in Stan Grant's letter when he departed the ABC, he didn't take aim at any other network or any other organisation. He laid a lot of blame squarely at the feet of the ABC, saying he was invited onto that show to share a particular experience. I personally think it was a little tasteless, whoever was responsible for putting that together. It was the coronation, and Stan Grant did say what he said. Free speech has consequences, and there were a lot of people that didn't think it was an appropriate tone to set on the coronation night. We are still a constitutional monarchy, and King Charles is still there. So.
All right, why don't we move on to Narendra Modi's visit. There is a big trade push around this rather brief visit. Green hydrogen is a big part of this, Josh, and money was plugged into the budget to try and get that going in this country. Is that something viable, an industry that we can viably trade with, export to India?
Well, it's one of the industries that we're seeking to trade further with India, and green hydrogen is something that is still in its development stage, and we've put a lot of money behind it, and we're also looking to work alongside the United States, who have put a lot of money in the Inflation Reduction Fund. But let me also say this about India. This is the largest population on Earth. You know, this is a country that is going to be the third biggest economy on Earth. It's a huge player in our region. We've already increased our ties on a whole range of matters. We're working collaboratively with them in the Quad. You know, you go and speak to an Australian university about how important it is that we have good relationships with India. And the final and possibly the most important point is that people from India who have made Australia their home have made and are making such an important contribution to our society. They are proud Australians. They love Australia. There is a bit of conflict around the cricket Ashes, the cricket series, but it is a warm relationship and one where we are building on it. And I certainly welcome further ties between Australia and India.
And we're going to see a celebration of that very visually and publicly in Sydney tonight, Hollie. But on green hydrogen, as Josh says, it's a highly competitive race to try and make this a happening product internationally. Deep pockets in the US. Is Australia a contender to make this happen?
Look, there was investments in this area as well under the previous government, but as Josh points out, this is still an emerging technology. We currently export significant amounts of coal to India, and we should certainly be looking to increase that product that exists, that isn't something that is a little bit pie in the sky at the moment. Coal's coming out of the ground. We should be making sure that we're meeting the demand that India wants when it comes to our coal. It's certainly a much cleaner coal than they can purchase from other countries. But the Indian diaspora in Australia is very significant. The diaspora is huge across this country and they make such a great contribution. Even some of the footage already outside where Modi's going to be tonight it's like a cricket game's about to start. The way they're dressed up and cheering, it's. I actually just saw some footage of it and thought, God, well, do you think we'd ever have a Prime Minister in our country who had people outside a stadium cheering for them? It's
going to be quite...
It's quite an interesting way they're dealing with it.
It's going to be quite a night. And I think I saw in the US on an earlier visit, they got 50,000 into a Texas stadium or something. And it was all colour and all culture, that's for sure. Hollie Hughes, Josh Burns, thanks both of you for joining us once again. I know you've got other responsibilities and places to be. We'll let you go and talk again soon.